Thank you and your companions for joining us on the YouTube channel of Nghe An Newspaper, the digital social publication of Nghe An Newspaper and radio and television. Right after this, we will come to the latest news that we have just updated.
According to the Financial Times, on September 15th, the federal grand jury in Florida, USA, convicted Cluston L., 35, a former U.S. soldier who fought against Russia and Ukraine, of murder and violating the Neutrality Act. Lang was also convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, and causing injury abroad. The indictment stated that in 2018, Lang and accomplice Alexo Hover lured a couple, Seraphin Danny Lorenzo and Diana Lorenzo, to the town of Estero, Florida, and then attacked them. The two fired more than 50 shots, robbed $3,000 to finance their trip to Venezuela, incited a coup, and overthrew President Nicolas Maduro. Feehofer, also a former soldier who fought in the Quina, was sentenced to life in prison last year for murder and violating the Neutrality Act. The case attracted international attention not only because of its violent nature, but also because it warned of the dangers posed by Western militants who have become extremists after fighting abroad. On the evening of September 15th, the FB Project newspaper reported that Ukraine's publicly declared campaign to destroy Russia's entire oil production capacity had targeted St. Petersburg last weekend. Accordingly, drone attacks hit an oil refinery, sanctioned oil tankers, the port where they were anchored, and a fuel train were all targeted in a daring raid on Russia's rear. Starting late on the night of the 12th, control units of Ukraine's 14th Drone Regiment launched one of the largest swarm air attacks since the beginning of the conflict. Over the next 4 hours, 220 to 230 long-range drones were launched at multiple targets across Russia. Around 30 kamikaze drones headed towards the northwestern Leningrad Oblast shortly after midnight, successively diving into the Primo oil pumping station. The type of device used in this attack has not been disclosed. In previous attacks at a distance of over 800 kilometers, Ukraine typically used the UJ-22 Lyady, a precision-guided propeller-driven aircraft carrying a 75 kilograms, 165 pounds, warhead. The Primo facility receives crude oil via pipeline from inland Russia and then transfers it to the nearby U.S. Teluga port, where the oil is pumped onto tankers belonging to Moscow's Dark Fleet. U.S. Teluga is a major energy export gateway for the Russian Federation via the Baltic Sea. Regional Governor Alexander Drozdenko reassured constituents in a telegram message that all but 2 drones had been shot down and ground damage was minimal. He affirmed that the authorities had the situation under control. However, Russian media, citing local sources, reported that Ukrainian drones had hit and damaged 2 giant oil tankers anchored at the Primo terminal, as well as the diesel oil pumping system onto a smaller vessel. The vessels were identified as the Custo, flagged Sierra Leone, with a deadweight of 105,000 tons, the Cayenne, flagged Sierra Leone, with a deadweight of 109,000 tons, and the FF, flagged Hong Kong, China, with a deadweight of 51,000 tons. According to data from the monitoring group MarineTraffic.com on September 15th, all 3 vessels had not moved from the Primo port since the 12th. Video footage of an attack showed an unidentified oil tanker being hit midship. This was followed by a fierce orange explosion. According to industry reports, the Custo suffered the most severe damage, forcing 28 crew members to abandon ship, with no casualties reported. Also on September 15th, the Ukrainian military information tracking group Strike News reported that 2 of the 4 berths, including berths 1 and 3, at Primo had been out of operation since the 12th. Additionally, the Custo was confirmed to be fully loaded when it was hit. Ukrainian energy journalist Petro Anti-Uschenko commented that damage to the pipeline and pumping equipment on shore could have halved Primo's oil pumping capacity. Vessel tracking data reviewed by the FB Project newspaper confirmed a sharp decrease in vessel traffic at the port. The Custo and Cayenne, belonging to the Dark Fleet, are subject to sanctions by the UK, the European Union, EU, and Canada. These vessels are used by Russia to circumvent oil embargoes. The Kremlin accused Ukrainian frogmen of carrying out magnetic mine attacks on Russian oil tankers, with underwater explosions previously hitting vessels anchored in Turkey's U.S. Teluga, Italy's Savona, and off the coast of Libya. Kyiv did not officially claim responsibility, But Ukrainian intelligence officials declared that Russia's dark fleet of oil tankers would be attacked wherever and whenever possible. The Primo attack marked the first confirmed instance of Ukraine using long-range drones to directly attack sanctioned Russian oil tankers. 2 nights later, on the 14th, Ukraine launched another 80 to 90 drones, attacking multiple targets across Russia. At least 3 of these hit the Kryvyi-Rih oil refinery, approximately 100 kilometers southeast of St. Petersburg. This plant processes 17 to 20 million tons of oil per year, accounting for about 6% of Russia's total refining capacity. It is the main source of petroleum products for St. Petersburg and the surrounding Leningrad, Novgorod, and Pskov regions. At least 2 drones struck the main distillation tower, causing a fire and explosion. Firefighters said the blaze was extinguished within the day. Governor Alexander Drozdenko stated that all Ukrainian drones were shot down and debris from one caused a small fire that was quickly put out. However, satellite images analyzed by DK Sport newspaper show structural damage to the plant's storage tanks and processing areas. In another blow to St. Petersburg's energy infrastructure, the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, and the Main Directorate of Intelligence of Ukraine, HUR, blew up a train carrying fuel on the Orange St. Petersburg line on the night of May 13 to 14, 2024. After the attack, 2 train crew members were killed and another railway worker was seriously injured. The explosion paralyzed the main 2-way railway line for at least 24 hours. HUR stated that mines were placed on the tracks by special forces operating behind enemy lines. Images in local media showed the locomotive and 15 fuel cars heavily damaged and derailed on the evening of May 14. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky declared that the most effective sanction, the fastest-acting measure, was the fires at Russian oil refineries, ports, and oil depots. We have significantly restricted the Russian Federation's oil industry, and that means restricting the conflict. Russia's war is closely tied to oil, gas, and other energy sources. I thank the SBU Special Forces for successfully completing their mission in Primorsk, striking Russia's largest oil port on the Baltic Sea. Very significant damage has been confirmed. The Primorsk port on the Baltic Sea has a capacity of 50 to 60 million tons of crude oil per year. The nearby U.S. Teluga export port has a capacity of 30 million tons. In peacetime, these 2 ports handle about 15% of Russia's total seaborne energy exports, valued at 20 to 30 billion US dollars per year. Reports from the Russian Federation's energy industry acknowledge that recent Ukrainian attacks have reduced this output by about half. Last August, Ukraine launched a drone attack campaign, prioritizing striking the Russian Federation's energy infrastructure. Since then, there have been at least 45 attacks, hitting about 22 oil and gas production, storage, or transportation facilities. More than a dozen major railway junctions, as well as defense industrial facilities, airfields, and Russian military headquarters, have also been attacked. The Kremlin spokesman accused Ukraine of attacking Russian civilians by mid-month. Retail fuel shortages, soaring gasoline prices, and even many empty gas stations were reported in the Far East, Siberia, Central and Eastern, as well as southwestern Russia, the Volga River Basin, and the outskirts of Moscow and St. Petersburg.
On September 15th, Ukraine's Skarbata reported that the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Alexander Sisky, had dismissed Vladimir Sylenko and Maxim Katukin, the commanders of the 17th and 20th Army Corps. This is the first high-ranking personnel change since President Volodymyr Zelensky announced the transformation of the Ukrainian Armed Forces into a corps structure. Ukronokta said that the commanders of Sylenko and Khytin were dismissed 1 to 2 weeks ago after the areas they commanded suffered losses against the Russian army. In particular, Sylenko's 17th Army Corps is responsible for the frontline area south of Zaporizhia, where the Ukrainian army has lost control of the village of Kamyansk and has been partially pushed back from Platin. Both areas are located along the Du River. Meanwhile, Katukin's 20th Army Corps is deployed along the border between Donetsk and the pro-Pepchot provinces, which the Russian army first crossed in August. Also on September 15th, KF Independent reported that Ukraine's Minister of Digital Transformation Myklo Fedor announced that the country's Prey-1 defense industrial complex had completed the final stage of testing a new suicide UAV with a range of more than 40 kilometers. The new UAV is designed to counter Russian electronic warfare systems and will soon be tested in combat. Fedorov said that the suicide UAV with a range of 40 kilometers is capable of overcoming electronic warfare systems and represents a new level of capability for attacking the enemy. Electronic warfare has become one of Russia's key defenses against Ukraine's UAV arsenal. Jamming is aimed at preventing the UAV from attacking its target. If Ukraine's new UAV proves to be resilient to Russian electronic warfare, it could improve Moscow's ability to attack logistics centers, artillery positions, and equipment behind its lines. Attack UAVs are becoming an economical and practical solution for the front line, Fedorov added. They are affordable and easy to scale up. KF has been rapidly expanding its UAV development program. Since the Russia-Ukraine conflict erupted in February 2022, President Zelensky said in June that Ukraine could produce 8 million UAVs a year, but lacked the financial resources to achieve this goal.